Okay, let's discuss. I've always had a soft spot for science fiction movies, the kind that reaches for awe, but also has the nerve to sit with big, unsettling ideas. And after years of combing through every major streaming platforms month after month trying to figure out what's actually worth your time, I can tell you this much with some confidence that sci-fi availability is always in flux. Currently, Netflix and Tube both suck when it comes to sci-fi, but surprisingly, YouTube does not. So, in this video, I'm going to be recommending 12 rock-solid sci-fi flicks you can catch for free right here on YouTube, which is why this list exists. What's currently available for free on YouTube legally, officially, through their rotating movie catalog is not just good, it's shockingly good. And I've been recommending free YouTube movies for years now with other on my channel, and I honestly can't remember a moment when their science fiction lineup felt this deep, this confident, or this loaded with films that slipped through the cracks the first time around. These aren't bargain bin distractions. They're the kind of movies that make you stop scrolling and actually settle in. The availability of all these free movies listed in this video will vary from country to country, but don't worry, I have included links to where to download them and their full review on website on the description of this video, so you can check it out. Also, if you like getting non-stop movie recommendations like this, like the video, subscribe for future recommendations. Kicking things off on our list, at number 1, The Signal. A movie that understands the value of patience. Now, I will say this is a fairly slow-paced sci-fi movie. It takes quite a while for you to figure out what's going on, but that's half the fun with The Signal. The story follows a clever, restless young man who traces a mysterious signal to its source and pays dearly for satisfying that curiosity. Early on, he blacks out, wakes up inside an unfamiliar facility, and realizes he now has prosthetic legs. From there, the film becomes a puzzle box. Where is he? Who's controlling this place? And what exactly happened to him? You can feel the film testing your attention span, asking you to lean in rather than wait for answers to be handed over. And yes, it demands patience. But by the time it reaches its final act, when the larger picture snaps into focus, it's hard not to feel that the journey earned its payoff. The ending reframes everything that came before it, and suddenly the slow burn makes sense. Next on our list, Lucy. This is one of the sci-fi movie that's almost defined by contradiction. It promises the universe and delivers something smaller, but not without leaving an impression. Lucy Besson, who's always been more interested in style and momentum than philosophical rigor, builds a slick, fast-moving sci-fi fantasy around a woman who accidentally absorbs a radical new chemical and begins to transcend normal human intelligence. And not gradually either. Her mind rockets past human limits with frightening speed. For much of its runtime, the movie is exhilarating. Visually sharp, confidently paced, full of ideas that feel big and reckless, but it also feels like a film that doesn't quite know what to do with the territory it claims. By the end, it retreats instead of pushing further. That's disappointing, yes, but it doesn't erase the fact that the first half is pure, stylish sci-fi pleasure. Definitely worth checking out. Next on our list, Red Planet. This is a movie that deserves far more generosity than it's usually given. Directed by Anthony Hoffman, who bafflingly never made another feature. It stars Val Kilmer, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Tom Sizemore on a mission to Mars that immediately begins unraveling. This isn't a hard science procedural like The Lucy. It's looser, stranger, more willing to indulge in speculative ideas and pulpy thrills. Once they reach Mars, the mission collapses, and the film pivots into survival mode. There's a rogue robotic unit that stalks the crew like a mechanical panther, and there's something else on the Martian surface, something lethal and unexpected. The cast, which also includes Benjamin Bratt and John Goodman, gives the movie a grounded energy, even when the plot veers into heightened sci-fi territory. It's not a masterpiece, but it's imaginative, watchable, and far more entertaining than its reputation suggests, especially considering it's free. Next on our list, Explorers.
I tied into my father's computer on the modem and filled in some details in your drawing. So I used my computer, which is only a one.
This came out smack dab in the middle of the 80s, and it is quintessential 8s kids movies like Stranger Things with a very soft edge to it. Ethan Hawke is obsessed with 1950s movies about aliens, and he has these reoccurring dreams about blueprints for a spaceship. He and his friends decide to build it and literally go to space. Tons of fun for young kids, especially if you've got kids, nephews, nieces that don't mind watching something like this with 40 years on it. A movie with a plot line very similar to Lucy that I think delivers much better and has a much more realistic approach to the same concept is Limitless. It's the kind of movie that seems designed for sequels and technically got one in TV form, but it also stands perfectly well on its own, and honestly, it's more rewatchable than it has any right to be. One of those films people quietly love but rarely talk about anymore. Next on our list, War of the Worlds. This is one of the best 1950s alien movies of all times. Still, one of the finest alien invasion films ever made. Yes, it looks quaint now. Yes, but the style reads as campy by modern standards. But beneath that surface is a sturdy, effective adaptation of H.G. Wells' story that understands scale, fear, and restraint. It's relatively kid-friendly. Not because the movie story isn't dark, but because the film suggests more than it shows. For a movie made in the 50s, that restraint is part of its power. And remember, everything beyond this point ranks above War of the Worlds. That should tell you something. Next on our list, Minority Report.
I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks. Give the man his hand.
This science fiction is nearly 25 years old and somehow still feeling like the future hasn't quite caught up to it. Spielberg, working from a Philip K. Dick story, creates a world that feels plausible, tactile, and disturbingly close. The technology, the interfaces, the moral questions, it all still feels relevant. And visually, this might be one of Spielberg's most striking films, a claim that sounds bold until you really think about it, compared to his other sci-fi efforts from the era of AI, or even his later War of the Worlds. Minority Report feels sharper, more controlled, more confident. It's not just spectacle, it's a tightly wound thriller with real ideas about free will and surveillance. You can feel Spielberg firing on all cylinders. Next on our list, The Thing.
There they are.
John Carpenter's crown jewel. Yes, Halloween is more influential, but The Thing is the better film. A paranoid, brutally intelligent sci-fi horror story that still feels unmatched. The practical effects remain staggering, not just for their gore, but for how convincingly they sell the impossible. Carpenter directs with icy precision, letting tension simmer rather than explode. What makes it endure isn't just the effects, it's the intelligence underneath. The distrust, the isolation, the way fear erodes community. And that ending, quiet, ambiguous, devastating, still lingers long after the screen goes dark. Finally, Blade Runner and Blade Runner 249. It's surprising to realize that the original Blade Runner came out the same year as The Thing. Even more surprising is that both movies were box office flopped, famously so. I'm talking about Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, which is somehow free on YouTube right now. And after really thinking about it, I do believe Blade Runner 2049 is the weaker of the two, but mostly because the original was so groundbreaking. Not just because of the effects or the cyberpunk city, but because of how Ridley Scott told the story. At the time, it was completely new. Having the final cut only reinforces that. That doesn't take away from how impressive Blade Runner 2049 is. It's an incredible looking film, and a lot of what you see was done practically. It was shot like an old-school movie with digital effects used to enhance rather than overwhelm. Every frame looks intentional and polished, and despite all the praise for Denis Villeneuve's in Dune and Dune Part 2, I still think Blade Runner 2049 stands as the stronger sci-fi film. If you know a movie that deserves more attention, drop it in the comments because some of the best recommendations come from people who actually love cinema. Taken together, these films don't just promise spectacle. They suggest a year where science fiction once again asks big questions about identity, power, connection, and survival at a scale only cinema can truly handle.